And Caitlin Clark, she's shooting the ball from 32 feet, pulling up from the logo. And these ladies in her league, they're upset. They don't like it. They don't like that she's getting all the publicity, the big sneaker deals. I got no problem at all with them shoving her. I mean, they're trying to intimidate her. They're trying to get her not to go to the rim, not to make certain passes.
Reports surfaced recently claiming that Herbert Simon, the billionaire who owns both the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, allegedly walked into a meeting with team executives and made a declaration that could reshape the entire WNBA. According to these unverified reports, Simon reportedly told management in no uncertain terms that the Indiana Fever is now Caitlin Clark's team. Not just her team in spirit, but officially organizationally from the top down. If these claims are accurate, it would represent one of the most significant power moves in women's basketball history. But here's the thing. We need to separate what we know for certain from what's being whispered about behind closed doors. Before we get into what allegedly happened, let's establish who we're talking about and why this matters. Herbert Simon is 90 years old now. Born in Brooklyn back in 1934, along with his late brother Melvin, he built the Simon Property Group into one of the largest real estate empires in America.
Like I've said, when she gets to the WNBA, she's gonna be surrounded by more talent. And I didn't know the quality of talent that she has on that particular roster. If that's all true and they're healthy, what are you're not gonna be to throw the house at her. She's gonna be to come off of screens and catch and shoot.
His net worth sits north of $5 billion, according to Forbes. Simon bought the Indiana Pacers back in 1983 when the franchise was on the brink of folding, and he's been the longest-standing owner in NBA history. When the WNBA expanded in 1999, Simon stepped up to bring a women's team to Indianapolis the Fever have been playing since 2000. For most of their history, the Fever have been a respectable franchise. They won a championship in 2012 with Tamika Catchings, reached the finals twice more, and built a solid reputation. But let's be honest, for years they were not drawing major national attention. They had their fans in Indiana, but they weren't moving the needle for the league as a whole. Then came April 2024. The Fever had the #1 pick in the draft, and they selected Caitlin Clark, who had just broken the NCAA scoring record at Iowa. Everything changed overnight.
Not that I've been told. I don't anticipate, a certain level. I'm not a huge fan of minute restrictions. I think that's silly. I told them, I don't want to come back unless I'm 100% full go. Why would I be out there to play 20 minutes?
Clark's rookie season in 2024 shattered every attendance record the Fever had. The team averaged the highest attendance in the league. They sold out 16 of their 20 home games. Road opponents moved their games to NBA arenas just to accommodate the crowds wanting to see her play. The numbers were unprecedented. This wasn't just a good player joining the team, this was a cultural phenomenon that the WNBA hadn't seen since the league's early days. Now, here's where things get complicated. Social media reports began circulating recently that claimed Simon held a private meeting with Fever management and head coach Stephanie White. According to these unverified accounts, Simon allegedly made it clear that the organization needed to be built around Caitlin Clark, that decisions should center on what's best for her development and career, and that she should essentially have significant influence over the direction of the franchise.
Can we be clear about this? If Caitlin Clark were not in the WNBA, we would not be talking about the WNBA. She's the only ticket draw in the WNBA. A large percentage of all tickets sold in the WNBA are so people can watch Caitlin Clark play basketball.
Some versions of these reports use the phrase Caitlin Clark's team, or even the acronym CCT. We need to be very clear here. There are no credible news sources confirming this meeting happened or that these words were spoken. No major sports journalists have reported on it. The Fever organization hasn't commented. Simon himself hasn't made any public statements about this. So we're dealing with rumors, speculation, and possibly wishful thinking from fans. But here's what we do know for certain. Before the 2025 season started, the Fever organization underwent massive changes. In November 2024, they brought back Kelly Krauskopf as president of basketball and business operations. Krauskopf had overseen the Fever from their founding in 2000 through 2018, including their championship season. She knows the organization inside and out. They also hired Amber Cox as chief operating officer and general manager. And critically, they brought back Stephanie White as head coach.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy.
White isn't just any coach. She's a Purdue legend who won a national championship there in 1999. She played for the Fever from 2000 to 2004. She coached them before. from 2015 to 2016, posting a 37-31 record. She's an Indiana native through and through. The decision to bring her back wasn't random. It was deliberate, and it sent a message about what kind of leadership the franchise wanted. Then, in January 2025, the organization announced something else significant: a $78 million investment in a new practice facility. This isn't a small renovation. It's a 3-story, 108,000-square-foot complex with 2 regulation courts, advanced training areas, and wellness facilities. It's scheduled to open before the 2027 season. That kind of investment doesn't happen unless ownership is serious about competing at the highest level. So, while we can't verify the alleged meeting or the exact words reportedly spoken, we can see a pattern of behavior.
I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Kelsey Mitchell, number one, is held or chucked on every freaking possession and never gets a call off the ball. I think Aaliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league.
The Simon family has poured resources into the Fever in ways they hadn't before. They've assembled an experienced leadership team. They've committed serious money to infrastructure. These are not the actions of an ownership group that's content to just field a team. These are the actions of people who see an opportunity and are willing to invest in it. Now, what about the relationship between Stephanie White and the front office? The social media reports claim there's friction, tension over how much control Clark should have, disagreements about roster construction. Again, we have no confirmation of this. What we do have is White's actual public statements. After the 2025 season ended, she spoke about her team with genuine emotion. She called them one of the most special groups she'd ever coached. She praised their character and toughness. Those aren't the words of someone in constant conflict with her organization. There was one situation during the season that created some questions.
We're ready to start ramping back up and make sure, it's completely different when you're just doing one-on-one workouts and when you're out there in 5-on-5, getting up and down the floor, moving laterally. So she's been allowed to do some practicing.
Veteran forward DeWanna Bonner, who the Fever had signed before the season, stopped playing for the team in June. She was listed as out for personal reasons, but reports from credible sources indicated she had no intention of returning. When White was asked about it, she was brief. She said she hadn't had many recent conversations with Bonner and was focused on the players she had available. It wasn't hostile or schwanier, but it wasn't warm either. The franchise later traded Bonner away. Whether that situation had anything to do with Clark or organizational direction, we simply don't know. Here's what else we know about the 2025 season. It was brutal for Caitlin Clark. Personally, she dealt with a series of lower body injuries that limited her to just 13 games. Left quad, left groin, left ankle. It was one thing after another. In early September, the team announced she was done for the season. For a player who had played through everything at Iowa, who had carried enormous workloads, this was unprecedented. And yet, despite losing their biggest star for most of the season, the Fever fought their way into the playoffs. They upset the Atlanta Dream in the first round. They pushed the Las Vegas Aces to a Game 5 in the semifinals before falling in overtime. The Aces went on to win the championship, which means Indiana came very close to making the finals. That performance, without Clark for most of it, shows something important. The organization had built a real team, not just a showcase for one player. Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and others stepped up in massive ways. White's coaching proved to be excellent. The infrastructure that Krauskopf and Cox put in place worked. So when we circle back to these rumors about Simon allegedly making some kind of proclamation about this being Clark's team, we have to ask, would he even need to? The evidence suggests the organization was already operating that way. They made major structural changes right after drafting her. They invested unprecedented money into facilities. They brought in leadership that understood how to build around a generational talent. Whether Simon actually called a meeting and said those specific words, the actions speak for themselves. If these reports are accurate, if Simon did make this kind of directive, what would it mean? For Caitlin Clark, it would represent a level of organizational commitment that's rare in professional sports, especially for a player only in her second year. It would mean her input on roster decisions carries real weight. It would mean coaching philosophies need to align with maximizing her abilities. It would mean the entire operation runs through her. For Stephanie White and the coaching staff, it would create an interesting dynamic. White is an experienced coach with strong opinions about how the game should be played. She's not a pushover. But if ownership has made it clear that Clark is the franchise's foundation, then White would need to build her system around that reality. Based on what we saw in 2025, there's no evidence that's been a problem. White and Clark seemed to work well together in the limited time Clark was healthy. For the rest of the roster, it would set clear expectations. Players coming to Indiana would know they're there to complement Clark, not compete with her for attention or resources that could actually be appealing to the right players. Veterans who want to win a championship might see an opportunity to pair their experience with a generational talent. For the WNBA as a whole, it would represent a significant shift in how franchises think about building around stars. The league has traditionally been more egalitarian in its approach. But if the Fever are openly structuring everything around one player, and if it works, other teams might follow that model. Here's the bottom line. We can't confirm the specific claims about a meeting or an explicit directive from Herbert Simon, but we can confirm that the Indiana Fever have reorganized their entire operation in ways that suggest Caitlin Clark is absolutely central to their plans. Whether that happened because of one dramatic meeting or through a series of calculated decisions, the result is the same. The Fever are betting their future on her, and they're putting real money and real resources behind that bet. Time will tell if it pays off, but they've certainly committed to the path. What do you think? If you were running the Fever, would you build everything around one player, even a talent like Clark? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more coverage of the WNBA and women's basketball, make sure you subscribe.